Hello, my name is Tiffany from the University of Central Florida. Today I'm presenting our CHI paper, A New Uncanny Valley, the Effects of Speech Fidelity in Human Listener Gender on Social Perceptions of a Virtual Human Speaker. First, I will talk a bit about interacting with persuasive agents. Our paper focused on persuasive agents, which are used in a variety of applications, anything from e-commerce to medical counseling. Persuasive agents have a large potential societal impact. For example, they could convince someone to improve their energy consumption, but they could also convince someone to believe in fake news and misinformation. Persuasive agents also have increasingly widespread use in applications due to lower computing costs. Due to these reasons, scholars indicate that further study of the perception and use is required. Many virtual agents use synthetic speech, such as text-to-speech. Text-to-speech generates synthetic speech from input text. Early text-to-speech engines, which were created in the 90s, were found to be persuasive. However, they produced unfavorable ratings in social perception compared to recorded human speech, such as perceptions of credibility and trust and confidence. These perceptions can be important because they can impact user experience and long-term use. For example, they can affect the adoption of the technology. Modern text-to-speech engines were found to still have unfavorable ratings of social perception. For example, previous studies found that users gave lower ratings of engagement, trustworthiness, and credibility to modern text-to-speech in comparison to human speech. So we asked the question, can higher fidelity text-to-speech help perceptions of persuasive agents with synthetic speech? We investigated a recent development in text-to-speech, neural network-based text-to-speech. In standard text-to-speech, utterances are concatenated together to create a string of words. However, neural text-to-speech trains utterances using long, short-term neural networks and mimics human speech more accurately than standard concatenative text-to-speech. Neural text-to-speech has also gained interest in commercial applications, and in recent years they have been added to services such as Azure and AWS. Here I will show an example of standard concatenative text-to-speech and neural text-to-speech.
Professors at those schools who were interviewed recently said that senior comprehensive exams assured that only high-quality and knowledgeable students would be associated with the university. Professors at those schools who were interviewed recently said that senior comprehensive exams assured that only high-quality and knowledgeable students would be associated with the university.
Now, you may have noticed that the neural text-to-speech flows much nicer than standard text-to-speech, and it sounds more human-like. But we want to know, would this help improve perceptions of persuasive humans with synthetic speech? We conducted a virtual human experimental study that investigated a persuasive virtual human. We investigated 3 levels of speech fidelity: standard text-to-speech, neural text-to-speech, and human speech. We also disaggregated data by participant gender according to best practices. Our goal was to figure out, how does higher fidelity text-to-speech affect social perceptions of a persuasive virtual human? For our synthetic speech conditions, we used AWS Poly Joanna. We used this voice because the neural version of it was rated as more natural and human-like than the standard version. For our human speech condition, we recorded a female college student using a professional condenser microphone. Our virtual human can be seen on the right. For our dependent measures, we measured persuasion using pre- and post-tests for attitude change. For our social perceptions, we measured Likert scales loaded onto factors. In particular, we measured perception of the speaker with the factors competent, trustworthy, sincere, honest, and active, and perception of the message, which were interesting and stimulating, perception of the argument, which was effective, and perception of the voice, non-distinctive, lively, and unconfident. Participants were recruited from listservs in the United States. We had 79 participants, 39 male, 39 female, and 1 non-binary. Their mean age was 27.68. For our results on persuasion, we found that the virtual human was persuasive across all conditions. We also found that there is no main effect of speech fidelity or listener gender on persuasion. For our results for social perceptions, we found a significant main effect of speech fidelity on trustworthiness. Across all genders, we found that human speech was rated as more trustworthy than neural text-to-speech. but we found no significant comparisons with standard text-to-speech. So the virtual human with human speech was not rated as more trustworthy than the virtual human with standard text-to-speech. Upon disaggregating data by gender, we found that female listeners also rated the virtual human's voice as more lively than male listeners did. We were unable to compare non-binary participants due to a lack of sample size. We also found an interaction effect between listener gender and speech fidelity on trustworthiness. We found that male listeners rated human speech as more trustworthy than both neural text-to-speech and standard text-to-speech. However, there was no significant effect of speech fidelity for female listeners. On the figure on the right, you can see that the male listeners rate both the standard and neural text-to-speech conditions pretty lowly. However, the rating for the human speech condition jumps up. Meanwhile, female listeners rated all three conditions rather evenly. Overall, we found a surprising result for trustworthiness. Across all genders, although the virtual human with neural text-to-speech was considered less trustworthy than the virtual human with human speech, there is no significant difference between standard text-to-speech and human speech. This indicates that higher fidelity synthetic speech is not necessarily more favorable and may actually be more unfavorable. We possibly attribute this to the uncanny valley effect. The virtual human with neural text-to-speech may have sounded too close to human speech but missed key inflections and qualities of human speech, such as prosody and pauses. This may have caused participants to feel unnerved, according to the uncanny valley effect. So the virtual human with human speech and standard text-to-speech were acceptable, but higher fidelity synthetic speech was not. Our results also indicate that user gender may affect perceptions of trust of virtual humans. Early studies found that older synthetic speech engines had no interaction effects with gender, unlike our study. We found that text-to-speech improvements may be good enough to the point where female users find it to be acceptable, but it is still not enough for male users who only found human speech to be acceptable. We hypothesized that this may be due to an emerging male bias against persuasive virtual agents. An earlier study found that male users rated persuasive virtual agents more negatively than female users did. However, this effect needs to be further studied. We encourage future studies that investigate persuasive virtual agents to gender balance participants and to disaggregate data by gender. Thank you for listening to my presentation, and once again, my name is Tiffany Doe, and I will be more than happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.